What's up, YouTube, and welcome in or welcome back. And here we are, at the beginning, in a series that sounds like it's going to end with every subsequent entry, Final Fantasy. This is going to be a full series playthrough, and I'm talking full. We are going to be playing every mainline game, save except for the MMOs, and up to 30 possible spin-offs. In addition, we will be doing some Discord watch parties for the 2 different Final Fantasy animes, and of course the movies. Please help me appease the algorithm by leaving a like and subscribe if you want to stay up to date with our deep dive into the Final Fantasy franchise. Also stick around to the end of each video as we will be updating a tier list with each Final Fantasy game / show / movie as we play and or watch them. All of these games will be streamed live. There will be a link to my Twitch as well as to my Discord in the description. And before we jump in, I just want to give a little preface, my sort of history with Final Fantasy. We recently played Final Fantasy 16 on the channel, and yeah, I absolutely love that game. I know it's kind of gotten some mixed reviews, but for me, I thought it was great, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. The bulk of my Final Fantasy experience is with the 7, 8, 9 PS1 era. So later on in life, I did end up playing Final Fantasy 10, and I also played through Final Fantasy 15 relatively recently, and I really enjoyed that as well. So that's kind of what sparked the desire for this, and of course, like Final Fantasy 7. Has been a hugely influential game for me, as I know it has been for a lot of people. And yeah, the Final Fantasy VII Remake I had a great time with. I never actually finished it. I got to like the second to last chapter, and then something happened in my life, and I just kind of bounced off it. I don't even remember what it was. But yeah, the desire to kind of go back, and with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth coming out in just like what, 6 months or something like that. Like I felt like I really wanted to just do a deep dive into Final Fantasy and like, I don't know, just really immerse myself. Just maybe I've just got Final Fantasy fever, but yeah, that's kind of where the idea for this whole series playthrough came. And also, I just wanted something to focus on, some big project to focus on as far as content. But yeah, so that's just kind of a brief overview of where I'm at with the series. I've never played the early games, and I'm excited to check them out. I mean, we're going to see just how enjoyable they are to play in the year 2023 here. We're going to be doing the pixel remasters for the Final Fantasy 1 through 6, so I'm excited for that, just to see where everything kind of started and came from. I know there's been some stuff that's been retconned in the remasters, but I'm sure it'll still be a close enough approximation. So yeah, with all that being said, let's just hop into it. After a short introduction to the world, we are thrown in as a group of 4 heroes, presumably some type of hive mind, as they're never really differentiated, each of which is holding a crystal, which does get explained at the end of the game in a very vague way, but that's getting ahead of ourselves. Immediately, we are sent on a mission to take down Garland, a rogue knight previously in the service of the Kingdom of Cornelia, as well as rescue a princess, of course. This game was made in 1987, so you can't not rescue a princess. As soon as we exit Cornelia, though, we get severely beaten up by random encounters. Early in the game, healing items are very expensive, so we do a small bit of grinding, relying on the inn to heal us up. Just until we can survive the trip to the north, at least. We are playing the pixel remaster, so we have an auto battle feature that speeds up combat a bit, making each of your characters automatically choose the same action as their last manually chosen one. This helped a ton, as most of this game's runtime is taken up by random encounters, it feels like. I never played the original, but I can imagine this game being much more of a slog without this quality of life upgrade. We finally beef up enough to fight Garland and interrupt his harebrained scheme to trade the princess for the entire kingdom, presumably to course correct on the king's terrible infrastructure priorities. Now, either this fight is intentionally pretty easy, or we slightly overdid it with the grinding as we take Garland down with minimal effort. Sarah wakes up from her nap and says that's the first time anyone has ever beaten Garland. I guess nobody ever thought to spend 10 minutes beating up goblins outside the castle, because that's literally all it took. We teleport back to the castle, where the king says thank you and tells us the prophecy, which to paraphrase amounts to 4 Warriors of Light will come, destroy some monsters, and restore light to the world. Very bare-bones stuff. It's basic, but also kind of charming with the context of this being the game that started a now 36-year-long legacy. Also, we get our first key item of the game, a lute from the princess, which has been passed down through the generations. I'm sure that'll come in handy very soon. Right? The king repays us by finally doing his job and ordering some of his own infrastructure to be rebuilt. He hires a cheer squad to provide moral support as a local bridge rebuilds itself. Way to go, bridge. You did great. This ends what I assume is the prologue, as we get a classic Final Fantasy cutscene with a nice little pixel art silhouette overlooking a landscape. Our first stop is a town called Provoca, where we provoke a crew of pirates into a street brawl. After giving them a public beatdown, the captain decides to quit pirating and give us his ship. Seems like an extreme response, but hey, free boat. With the ship we can reach previously blocked off areas and just generally get around faster. Afterwards, we pay a visit to Fantasia, where a witch named Matoya has somehow had her crystal eyeball stolen right from her eye socket without her noticing. After some fruitless exploring and a boat trip across the sea, we arrive at Elfheim, another town-castle combination. Once inside, we spot a celebrity. It's the Legend of Zelda's own Link! Or I guess it's one of his descendants, because Link is here, but he has since passed on. Rest in peace, Link. We head to the castle to see if we can get a clue as to which direction to head. This game is very vague about where you're supposed to go, but if you just make it a habit to talk to everyone, it's not too hard to figure out what to do next. Which I actually enjoyed in this game. It makes you feel clever when it clicks. In the castle, we discover the Elf Prince has been asleep for 5 years, which I assume in elf years is just a light nap. We explore a bit to the west and find a hole. Of course we dive right in and find a relatively vast dungeon/cave system, populated by bats who only say key. Oh, also everything in this hole poisons you. So after a couple trips back to town to restock on antidotes, we clear out the cave and find a crown, which is neither a crystal eye or a way to wake up the Elf Prince. Also still haven't found a place to use this sweet loot Sarah gave us, so we are collecting key items, but there is definitely a missing link in this chain still. With no clear idea what to do next, I did end up wandering around for a moment. As I mentioned before, if you just talk to everyone, you'll get some clear clues where to go, and I definitely failed to do that early on. So after said wandering, I finally stumble upon a dilapidated castle just north of the hole. Inside, we find more bats, and they still only have one thing to say. We find the throne room, and there's what looks like a king ruling over his kingdom of bats and rubble. Anyways, he starts laughing, saying we had fallen into his trap, but it seems like a poor trap, as the only thing that lured me here was curiosity. Although something tells me I was supposed to come here before the hole for this gotcha moment to land. The king is Astos, in disguise, ruler of the Dark Elves or something. He says with the crystal eye he stole and the crown we found in that hole, he can become the true king of the elves. Well, he does have to take the crown from us first, and that does not go well for him. Between the trips back to town to get those antidotes and my need to hoover up every single item I find in dungeons, we are sufficiently overleveled and Astos becomes just another mess on the floor of this castle. With the eye recovered, we can return to Matoya, who just so happens to have a jolt potion for us, which we can administer to the elf prince, waking him up. The elves are grateful for the help, so they give us a mystic key, which opens a bunch of rooms and dungeons we've already been to already. So score, we get a bunch of items. I had assumed one of those items would have been a new key item to help us progress, but nope, it's all just a bunch of relatively generic loot. We find our way to the Duergar cave, where a society of dwarves live. We learn the names of some items we need to bring back here, but again, come up empty-handed as for progression items. This next section is the most wandering I did the entire playthrough. I ended up going back through every town I'd been to, talking to people looking for a clue to the next step. Of course, the last place I looked was Cornelia, which had a treasure room that was now accessible to me, and in that room we finally find the nitro powder, one of the items we needed back at the Duergar cave. We race back, give one of the dwarves the powder, and they blow a hole in the canal to the south, allowing us to take our ship to the outside of the continent and opening the map up to us. Now, there are no docks for the ship on the northern continent, but we do have a few places on the south continent that were previously unexplored. A short boat ride to the west of the newly formed canal, we find the town of Melmond. There we get to head southwest to the Cave of Earth because a vampire had taken root there. We descend into a cave once again, and guess what? Once again, everything poisons you. And worse still, we found one who can turn you into stone. Once we're fully stocked, we tear through the cave until we find a bat that doesn't say key. That's suspicious. And of course, it's our vampire. We demolish the enemy and get a star ruby, which thanks to another tidbit we got from Melman, we know there's a giant who wants to eat gemstones just a bit farther to the west. We hand over the priceless stone, and the giant gobbles it right up. Yep, just devours like a billion gil. But hey, it got him to move, so now we can go see this wizard or sage or whatever. He gives us an earth rod for getting rid of the vampire, which we can use to descend deeper into the earth cave. Further down, we finally encounter our first crystal of the game. And along with that, our first fiend, the Earth Lich. Generally when I think of liches, I think necromancy, so a chilled out lich who just likes nature is a nice change of pace. This is the first boss that gave us a challenge, albeit a small one, but still more than any other boss fight has up to this point. So after a longer than average, but still pretty short battle, we defeat the Earth Lich and restore the light to the first crystal. And I know it took a bit to get to the first crystal, but bear with me, the game does accelerate from here. It took me roughly 6 hours to get the first crystal, and then 6 hours to finish the rest of the game. Alright, with the first crystal down, we set out and wander once more. As far as I know, nobody we've talked to has told us what we should be doing after obtaining the crystal, and the only key item we have now is this loot. We eventually do stumble upon an unexplored area of the South Continent where we find a new town, Crystal Lake to be specific. Sorry, Crescent Lake, not Crystal Lake. Although we do find a group of older gentlemen having some kind of fishbowl discussion in the woods, which is kinda creepy in itself. We talk to each of them, and one of them gives us a canoe as a reward for taking down the Earth Lich. This is going to allow us to travel along rivers and shallow waters. Conveniently, we have a river system to navigate right next to Crystal Lake, which leads us to a volcano. Seems like a great environment to raise a fire fiend, if you ask me. We walk right into the volcano, with no protection against what has to be blistering heat, not to mention the toxic volcanic gases, and just casually stroll across some lava. Fortunately, not as many poisonous enemies in this dungeon, so we are able to save some money and spell slots while delving. We do, however, have to worry about instant death, but at this point we are well stocked on Phoenix Downs. A pretty uneventful dungeon exploration, aside from a couple pieces of elemental gear, which were nice to pick up. We reach the bottom and find the next crystal primed for the taking. What did I say? Much quicker than the first one. This crystal is guarded by a fire fiend by the name of Merilith. Apparently her original name was Carrie, but it was changed in the Pixel Remaster for some reason. Another only slightly harder than average fight here, but definitely a step up from regular bosses. We do lose our Black Mage Dragon Die in a single hit, but with Carol, the White Mage's newly acquired life spell, it's no big deal. We get Dragon Die on his feet and finish the fight with haste. That's 2 crystals down and only 2 to go. The other 2 have to be on the North Continent, so now it's just a matter of finding a way to get over there. We do have one more dungeon that we know of to explore, just north of the rivers to access the volcano. There's another section of rivers we need to navigate with the canoe. We do have to sail up the coast a bit, but not far. We get into the cave, and of course, in contrast to the fire dungeon we were just in, we get an ice cave. Again, I'm just grateful it isn't full of poison monsters. We eventually find our way down to what looks like a key item, but we're confronted with what looks like a boss battle upon interacting with it. We start to get set up protecting Spylo and casting haste on Dookie, and the evil eye goes down in a single hit. So a bit anticlimactic there. We acquire the Levis Stone, which we know thanks to the dwarves is a stone that can make things float. So obviously we need to go back to the dwarves and they can build us some kind of airship, right? Well, on the way back, there's a small patch of land I didn't check out quite yet, so let's stop there. It's on the way. Hold on, what's happening? Looks like our heroes are about to start a synchronized dance number, but no, that's the Levis Stone, and I guess it's summoning an airship from this random patch of desert? Yeah, so we stumbled upon this completely by accident. If I had checked this patch of dirt out before going into those dungeons, I definitely would have ended up lost, as the dwarf who mentions Levis Stone never even changes dialogue once you find it. All the music in this game slaps. For some reason the airship music is a real standout for me. It's just so upbeat and really evokes adventure to me. Listen to this. How can you not get fired up listening to that? We ride that incredible track all the way to the North Continent. We land on the North America-shaped western piece and make our way to the town of Onrak, where we pick up 3 leads. One is actionable immediately, a waterfall to the north had something fall near it. The others we'll need some kind of item for. There's a submarine made out of a barrel, naturally. The only flaw being we need a way to breathe while sealed inside, so we can save the mermaids. And the name of an item to take back to Melmond, the Rosetta Stone, which will help decipher a language of some kind, I guess. Of course, we first head north in our canoe to the waterfall, and in true video game fashion, there's a cave behind the waterfall. Honestly, if there's no cave behind a waterfall in your game, can you even call it a video game? I say no. In the waterfall cave, we find a robot deep inside, who gives us a warp cube, and then starts malfunctioning, probably because of the moisture in the cave. They seem content to just stay there and spark though, so we're off to the next thing. Without any concrete direction, we just decide to fly around the northern continents and see what we can see. Find a couple of deserts, one of which has a hidden caravan selling a fairy in a bottle. Poor Link, if only he'd found this caravan. We then come upon a chain of islands with a bunch of holes in them. I prepare to explore a metric ton of dungeons here, but we go into the first hole and hey, it's an underground town. That's not connected underground at all. Seems like a weird choice, but hey, this town is populated by dragons, so they get a pass from me. We finally find the hole where the Dragon King resides, and it's none other than the legend himself, Bahamut. I won't lie, I was really hoping to get a summon here. Instead, Bahamut wants us to prove our courage, and tells us to go to a citadel to the east, to test our mettle, and bring back a symbol of our bravery. So of course we hop to it, try to finagle a landing spot near the Citadel, but after a few moments give up and park down the block. We arrive at the Citadel of Trials, and there is a wizard sage who comments on us bearing a crown. I assume it's the same crown Astos tried to shake us down for. So neat that came up once again. We have to navigate a teleporter puzzle, and after some trial and error, we do find the way through. This leads us to a throne room with a chest to the side. The chest contains a rat tail, surely our symbol of courage, and to be fair, I would need to be a braver man to rock one of these. We return to Bahamut, rat tail proudly displayed. He commends our choice in hairstyle and bestows upon us some power in recognition of our bravery. All our classes are evolved, allowing for more choices in spells and equipment, and I assume a stat boost, although I didn't check on that. We've been pretty over-leveled for the whole game thanks to auto-battling through all the random encounters, so this power spike feels almost unnecessary. Almost. All beefed up and ready to battle, we head east and find another town that we have to park far away from. And when we get there, we can't understand a thing they're saying. Fortunately, we got the clue earlier that we just need to find the Rosetta Stone and we can return here. At least that's my assumption. We head to the desert nearby to check out the tower there. We walk up to the front and just can't enter, unsure whether we're missing an item or this is just a conversation piece for whomever owns this desert. We head out and find yet another town nearby in the mountains called Gaia, which I thought was the name of the planet in the Final Fantasy games. Turns out it's just a hamlet in the mountains. Immediately upon entry, the bottled fairy we bought earlier busts out of the bottle we had it in and flies off to a local pond. We go meet the fairy by the pond, and she's grateful we returned her to her home. So she flies down, scrapes some scum off the bottom of the pond, and gives it to us. Apparently it's magic pond scum though, as it gives off constant oxygen, exactly what we need to use the barrel submarine. We fly back to Onrak with our magic pond scum and hop into the submarine, which autopilots us down to the water shrine. We make our way up and down one staircase over and over again because I kept thinking I was coming out of a door, and so I just kept walking back onto the stairs. So that one's definitely on me, although I did eventually figure out what I was doing wrong. Along the way we find the Rosetta Stone, and thanks to chat I found out that the Rosetta Stone is a real thing, which helped scholars decipher old Egyptian scripts, and I just thought it was really neat that if you didn't know where to take it, you could get an IRL clue as to what it's for in the game. On the opposite side of the dungeon, we eventually find our third crystal, which also means our third fiend fight, this time against the Kraken. This is the easiest fight of the fiends so far. We pop a couple strength tonics on Dookie and Spylo, while Dragon Die resolves stop. And then we just proceed to wail on the Kraken until it goes down in very short order. And that's our third crystal down, with only a single one remaining. With the Rosetta Stone, now we can head back to Melmond, where a scholar we met much earlier can use it to decipher the Lefenian language. With the language deciphered, we head back to Lefenia, and hey, look at that, we can understand them now. We talk to every single person. One of them tells us their ancestor Sid built the airship we're using. Not sure if that's a retcon or not, but still fun that they snuck the Sid reference in there. And finally, the last person in town gives me an item, presumably as a reward for talking to everyone else. A chime to go with our loot, which we have still not found a use for. The Lufenians tell us that the chime will open the tower we couldn't access in the desert earlier. So off we go, chime in hand to the Mirage Tower. Once inside, we find a boss from earlier in the game picking up a shift as a regular enemy. And some more robot friends, like the one we met at the waterfall. They don't understand when capital letters are appropriate, probably because of all the dust. We climb the floors of the tower until we reach the top, where we find a teleporter. Here we need the warp cube to be teleported to a fortress in the sky. The final shrine, home of the final fiend, Tiamat. We wind our way through the halls without much issue, even finding a piece of adamantite along the way. There's also a cool little observation deck that shows the 4 shrines pointing back to the Chaos Shrine, our first destination of the game, and also a not so subtle hint as to where to go once we're done here. We find Sasuke's blade and several tablets that repeatedly tell us Tiamat has no weakness, but we'll see about that. Finally come face to face with Tiamat, who looks awesome by the way. We have some heavy duty magic at this point, so we start unloading holies and flares on Tiamat. And she goes down. Looks like she did have a weakness. These hands. Or this magic staff, or whatever. Anyways, back to Crystal Lake. But first we get our adamantite forged into Excalibur, which is a nice little power spike. The old dudes at Crystal Lake just tell us to go to the Chaos Shrine, so just an unnecessary detour really. We arrive back at the Chaos Shrine, the bats have learned to speak, and it's time to focus our crystals on the Black Crystal. Which sends us hurtling through time 2,000 years in the past, when the Chaos Shrine was huge and honestly looked really nice. We make our way through the now massive Chaos Shrine until we reach a room with a stone slab. And here it is, the moment we've all been waiting for, finally. You get to use our loot! The first key item we received that had been passed down from generation to generation until it reached Princess Sarah. What a payoff. On the other side of the slab we find an Earth-themed floor, which brought back some enemies from the Earth Cave, and wouldn't you know it, there's the Earth Lich, much like the shrine, rejuvenated, being 2,000 years younger I guess. Because they're much stronger than the first time around, it takes some doing this time. We no longer feel over-leveled, but eventually take the Lich down once again, even if Spylo wasn't breathing for the end. Next up is of course a rehash of the fire area. We take on Marilith in her more powerful form. And this one goes much smoother. Her defense was high, but blizzard spells and crits are enough to put her down, this time with everyone up at the end. We rip through the water floor and face off with the Kraken once more. The Kraken immediately one-shots Dragondie, and since he's at least a third of our DPS, we make sure to get him up and protected. But that initial attack did make me sit up a bit straighter. The rest of the fight goes smoothly though, and we vanquish the Kraken once more. The last part of this boss rush is of course the Wind Floor, and a rematch with the just recently defeated Tiamat. This time we make sure to get the Protect onto Dragondie immediately. It's nice to actually have to strategize, even if it's just a bit. And I know Tiamat apparently doesn't have any weaknesses, but she was taking a ton of damage from our physical attacks, so maybe her weakness is stab wounds? With that being said, Tiamat goes down even easier than the first time, and we have completed the boss rush. The final confrontation with Garland, aka Chaos, in the same spot but 2,000 years prior to our first fight. Garland explains that he had sent the fiends into the future, and once there, the fiends sent him into the past, and he had created a time loop where he kills us over and over again for eternity. So what I gather is he has trapped himself and everyone else in a time loop, where he never wins. We just do the same thing over and over again, until he is defeated here in this moment. Maybe the worst evil plan I've ever heard? Anyhow, let's fight! We get set up with our hastes on Dookie and Spylo, and protect on Dragon Die, and fall into a routine of attacking and healing. But I miscalculate and we get hit with a very dangerous flare, and Dookie goes down for the first time that isn't an instant death or stone effect in this run. So we have to go into survival mode for a moment and use healing items for the first time in the game mid-battle. Needless to say, this is the hardest fight in the game so far, but other than a few slightly scary moments, our damage output is still high enough to take him down before he can chain too many flares together, and that's it. Chaos defeated. We have broken the time loop, and that is Final Fantasy 1 done. We get another very slow-moving exposition crawl over a very nice pixel background, explaining the world can now move on from this loop of disaster. Previous civilizations which were in ruin may now flourish once more, and nobody will ever remember the struggle of these four heroes that saved the world, even if it wasn't really that much of a struggle. Now, remember what I said about them explaining the crystals being held in a very vague way? So I guess my interpretation is that they just show up holding the crystals every time they get sent back and a new loop starts. So like I said, it's very vague and not entirely explained, but that seems to be the simplest explanation. Overall, I really enjoyed my time with this game. The music was phenomenal, the combat system, while very basic, was quick, and the numbers went up fast. I think if this had been padded out like a lot of more modern RPGs are, it could have outstayed its welcome pretty quick, but as a 10-ish hour experience, I had a great time, and can't wait for the next one. I think the next game we play will be Stranger of Paradise, as it ties in directly to the first one, and we'll try to do all of the game's spin-offs in close proximity to that game as they come up. I know this isn't exactly the experience players had in 1987, but that isn't what this series playthrough is about. It's about experiencing the entire series in the year 2023 and probably into 2024, and understanding the highs and lows of the series for myself. I already enjoy basically everything I've played from the series, so I liken it to hearing a few different songs from an artist, then deciding it's time to check out the discography. Also, I love lists, so I'm interested in making my own definitive tier list by the end, and I hope you'll share your own lists along the way. I'd love to hear about your favorite Final Fantasy, or ones you think are underappreciated, or just things you're excited to see me get to. But yeah, that's it, the first step in our Final Fantasy journey. And now we can add it to our tier list. Alright, and here we are at the tier list. As you can see, we don't have many titles here. I've got some placeholders because you have to have a minimum amount of images. But yeah, we've got Final Fantasy 16 as we played that on the channel before, and we are about to add Final Fantasy 1 to the tier list. We'll just be adding everything sort of one by one as we go. I mean, I'll probably do a new tier list every single time. I've got Final Fantasy 16 in A. I mean, it might be S tier, but like I said, we're going to do new ones every time. So right now, this is kind of the comparison I'm going to make. I really loved Final Fantasy 16. I thought the story was great and very moving, and yeah, I got very choked up at the end, so it gets points for that. And also the combat was fun, even if it was really easy. But yeah, we're going to go Final Fantasy 1 B tier. It started it all, but the metric I'm using right now is going to be just how enjoyable it was to play today in the modern age, or whatever. And yeah, like I said, I enjoyed it. It was fast. I think it was fun, but it wasn't like incredible. So I think it's good. I think B tier is good, solid. All right, thank you so much for watching. I hope it was enjoyable, and yeah, I guess I'll see you in the next one for Stranger of Paradise, Final Fantasy Origin. All right, bye bye.